Is Fnaf 3 a disappointment? This is a question I've asked myself as we are 10 years since the original release of the first installment, meaning I felt it was a little bit right time to talk about this because this is a really kind of divisive game, I would say. I think what it eventually accomplished in terms of the series is really held in high regard, but I think overall what the game was when it came out, there was a little bit of a mixed bag from what I remember when the game came out, considering it was the fact that it was incredibly hyped up since Fnaf 2 was a prequel and Fnaf 1 was the initial game. Fnaf 3 was expecting to be a huge game, which it was, and had a huge impact on the series and still has that impact to this day. But I want to talk about specifically about what the game did right and what it did wrong and what led to this kind of conception of it being a disappointment. One of the biggest strengths of Fnaf 3 is the lore aspect of it, and the lore being presented in the minigame style, which we saw in Fnaf 2. So this thing is that it allows players to have an interactive experience with the ending or outcome of the game, which we didn't previously in Fnaf 1 or 2, as you mostly just got your paycheck and you were on your way. But here, in this game, you directly have an impact of what happens. Do the spirits get laid to rest, or do they still alive and still in torment? Which is a good step in the series that it made. Even though, in my opinion, the good, true, and bad ending format has been played out, and it's pretty boring, I'd say. I know recently, Final Freddy's The Mimic, Secret of the Mimic, did this as well. I just think every FNAF game doesn't necessarily need that, but it's alright to the point where it's fine. I get it. I get why they do it, but I think FNAF 3 did it best, and it was the most simplistic. And this just overall created a different experience because it lets the player have an impact on the ending, and we hadn't previously seen that ending. And presented in the 8-bit style minigame with the music was also great to see. And I was very surprised of how well they executed the ending, of it showing very profound moments and showing a very impactful and really resonating with the overall community of the spirits being laid to rest. And that was it. And I thought that was a great ending. And one of the biggest strengths of the game. And the second thing I want to talk about in a positive light was Springtrap. As starting from teasers to his eventual reveal in the game, it was clear Scott wanted this character to be memorable. And that he did, and he created one of the most iconic horror villains in the genre. From his design to the movement in the game. As he exuded this new sense of evil that hadn't previously been seen in FNAF. As in the first two, while we do get a sense that these animatronics are killer robots, we didn't really get the sense that they were meticulously stalking us or meticulously trying to basically murder us. They were more so just confused about if we were, it was just, I don't know, he just gives a different feeling of evil and malicious intent. It wasn't as strong as in the other games. And but as good as Springtrap is, he himself exudes one of the weaker parts of the game, which has heavily been discussed over and over again, and that is his jump scare. And the major problem with Springtrap's jump scare is not itself. If this was an original game and his jump scare came out, it wouldn't be that big of an issue. But since it's in a series that popularized the point-and-click jump scare craze, it leaves players kind of feeling like this death that you have in FNAF 3 is preordained and kind of lacks anxiety. While in FNAF 2 and 1, it was a bit more of a balancing act of different things. So the jump scares are like, boom, you died. But here it's more like, you died, and it's just like his slow walk up to the camera is not as impactful as in other games. And it sucks because I could see the angle they're going for in this being a type of, now you died. Because you weren't like managing the heat of the building, you were managing this and that. So I get that. And I think this leads into I would say what people have the biggest problem with FNAF 3 is overall just the playability of it. As this one deviates from the fact that you don't really have a flashlight, you don't really have the mask that you got in FNAF 2. So it deviates that way. I think the introduction of the Phantom animatronics is a good concept, but when none of them can quote-unquote kill you, it does make them feel a little bit less significant as they become more so nuisances than the actual threat of the game, which is Springtrap. And he, unfortunately, comes into a trap of being very predictable in some ways. And despite him being like basically the smartest animatronic because he is a human at the end of the day. He does have a human mind, so he should be able to counter what you're doing in an effective way. But it feels like more so they're the nuisances that end up causing him to kill you, not him killing you himself. And to me, that just leaves FNAF 3 feeling very, very, not really a fun game to replay, honestly. I think I have gone back and played FNAF 1 and 2 more casually than FNAF 3 because FNAF 3 is more of a different type of experience. I think I play it more so because I want to see the lore, I want to see the ending, not because necessarily I think the game is as polished or as well planned as FNAF 1 and 2. I think another thing that unfortunately holds FNAF 3 back is the eventual release of FNAF 4, which is personally my favorite and which heavily deviated from what we've previously seen. There was no power system in FNAF 4, and there was not even a type of pizzeria location in FNAF 4. We're at home, we're in a very, very simple place, and yet it feels the most scariest despite the fact we're in a place we know of, home, our room. And that, compared to FNAF 3, makes FNAF 3 stand out even more, and unfortunately not in a good way, as FNAF 3 more becomes the dark child or the dark horse in the series, which is a bit unfair, but I do understand why people would have it lower on their rankings, well, because its strengths are clearly very, very, very highlights of the game. Its flaws stand out equally as strong. So, despite my opinions of the game, I do still think you should play it if you are getting into FNAF, because it is an important chapter of the series and does introduce some of the biggest pluses of the series, but don't be surprised if you don't enjoy it as much, because it does deviate from FNAF 1 and 2, and FNAF 4 makes the game feel even more different. And different is not always bad, but it is a different feeling than what you're used to. So I just wanted to give my quick opinions on FNAF 3, because FNAF 3 is an interesting game to me, and a very popular game in FNAF series, for better or for worse. And thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.